podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Whilst we always end our podcast with the phrase, we're gearing up for Glasgow and looking ahead to LA, we should also mention we're also going to be all over the Alps in 2030. And I mention that as there's been some big news on the next Winter Games this week. I'm Michael.
And I'm John. The International Olympic Committee have been meeting this week, as Michael says, and decisions have been made about the Winter Olympics. But the main headline from the get-together as well, the anticipated return to competition for Russian athletes after the IOC provisionally lifted the suspension of the Russian Olympic Committee.
Coming up, we'll hear IOC President Kirsty Coventry as the Russians return.
We needed to take a decision based off of what the strategic framework put in place and the strengthening of our neutrality.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast, where we talk about the games all the time, not just once every 4 years. The ban on the Russian Olympic Committee has been in place since October 2023, but has been overturned following analysis by the IOC's Legal Affairs Commission. The decision has been made because the Commission considers that the Russian Olympic Committee no longer includes any regional sports authorities in territories falling under the jurisdiction of the National Olympic Committee of Ukraine. We're getting into details, aren't we?
We are. Convenient as well. The IOC do say they will continue to monitor this situation. They also said they will take a decision in the future in relation to the display of the Russian flag, anthem, colours, national identifications. They've also stated their solidarity with the Olympic community of Ukraine. They also have made a point of stating that as Russian athletes returning to competition must meet the relevant anti-doping requirements. And there is a lot of detail about the number of tests athletes must have prior to rejoining the competition and the ongoing rules and regulations. Because, of course, we also know that Russia were banned slightly as well because of the state-sponsored doping from 2014.
And I think I said on a previous episode of the podcast, I think the IOC have got a bigger issue with doping than they have with war. This comes as there are continued doubts over the Russian anti-doping agency as well. So it's a bit of a mess, and we'll discuss it more after hearing again from the IOC President Kirsty Coventry. This was her speaking after the Executive Board meeting.
I think it's important for us to acknowledge that we don't condone any wars, including this one, and that is a stance that we will continue to take, and we will continue to support Ukraine like we have since this started. And I think I've shared with all of you, so sound like maybe a bit of a broken record in saying that I don't believe athletes should pay the price. And I wouldn't be sitting here if I had to pay the price when my country was going through things and being sanctioned. So I really do feel that we have been, in taking this decision, very fair to our principles in protecting athletes, but at the same time, being very direct and saying we will not host or look at any events in Russia, and we will not invite any Russian authorities, government or state to any of our programs. So I do hope that people see that balance and see that neutrality coming through and that fairness.
So that's Kirsty Coventry, International Olympic Committee President. I think we've tried to kind of run through the headlines. It's as clear as mud to me what it all means. I think the headline is, and it's perhaps not a surprise to any of us that follow this very closely, the Russians are coming back, and they're going to come back as Russia, not the independent athletes that we saw in Paris and that we saw in Milano Cortina.
And we knew it was coming because they'd already lifted it for the upcoming Youth Olympics in Dakar, which takes place later this year, actually. So there's always an Olympics around the corner, I say. There's a Youth Olympics coming up in Dakar. So
not many more of them coming up, by the way.
Well, no, to be fair. But we know that one's coming up. So we knew that they'd already relaxed the rules there. And I assume that if you start reading into it and the likes, if they're putting the drugs issue on the back burner, I know you've run through the things that they need to do to get back, but if you put that on the back burner, the issue is that the war with Ukraine, the invasion by Russia of Ukraine, has gone on a lot longer than anyone expected, and they feel totally uncomfortable having made a decision to ban Russia and Belarus because of that, particularly, and they did make this point at the time, there were hundreds of wars going on around the rest of the world. But ever since then, and something that is continuing a lot longer than we imagined, it is the Iran US Middle East conflict is continuing. And we've seen that overnight again, with more missiles being launched both ways from Iran and the USA. So I think that's the other issue. And that's the point where they've got to. Now, here is my argument. I think it's easier for the IOC to say, we're going to bring Russia back, and then we don't have to have this argument. I think it's the easiest option for them. But what my fear is that ultimately, does it allow people, and by people I mean world leaders, to think that they ultimately have control?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's got to the point where this is getting embarrassing for the IOC because they're showing no desire or interest to ban America from the games that they are hosting next time, and a Winter Olympics that they're hosting the time after next as well. They don't want to go down that route. Again, they don't want to do the same with Israel, who obviously are involved with the conflict, as you say, there in the Middle East, Israel and Palestine, Iran and the USA. They're showing no desire to do anything similar to any of those countries. And I think that has become too difficult for them now. So the easiest thing, do you get rid of Iran, the USA, Israel, Palestine, keep Russia, keep Belarus out? No, you just invite Russia and Belarus back. And we have seen in sports that there are Russian athletes, tennis is an example, that are competing on the circuit. We know that Kirsty Coventry's outlook is that it's about the athletes. It's not about what the government's decisions are making, which is why we've had independent athletes. So I think that's the reasoning behind it. The detail as to what happens next, maybe you can explain it to me. Maybe you're brighter than I am. I'm not quite sure, because they say that Russians can come back. And there's a nuance there that World Athletics a couple of days ago said, no, we're still not having Russians back in one of the leading Olympic sports. World Athletics would say the leading Olympic sport. But they haven't made a decision yet about Russian flags, Russian anthems, colours. So where's the difference between this and the independent athletes? Is this a route for teams to come back in? Because obviously we haven't had Russian teams, have we? So could we now have kind of independent Russian teams back in? I don't quite understand where they're going to go next, unless they're bringing the anthems, the uniforms, the parades and everything else back in. What is the difference here to where we were?
Go team neutral.
Am I being? I don't know. Maybe I'm not being the brightest coin in the jar here, whatever the saying is. Well, but I don't quite understand, other than the inclusion now of teams coming back in.
Well, I think that's the point. Again, it's an easy decision. Well, we'll let Russia back, but we haven't really decided on everything else. So we'll kick that into the long grass, and again hopefully by the time we get to LA, then we can make the right decision, because everything else has calmed down. And I think you're absolutely right to highlight what World Athletics have said. Sebastian Coe, as you said, they had a meeting, and they put it to their vote again. They presented the options to the council. Shall we let Russia and Belarusian athletes back? And they said the original decision remains on the sanctions that protect the integrity and fairness of our competitions. And this is my point, Michael, and I'm going to highlight this bit. I said about who has control, who thinks they have control. The IOC may think, and as Kirsty Coventry said, it's all about the athletes. We're in control. We can't stop wars, but we can put on sport, and that's what matters, and that's all fine. But who ultimately has control? For example, say you were watching the Football World Cup, and say that someone got sent off of your team that you didn't want to be sent off, and say that he got a red card and he missed the next match. Say that the president of your country phoned up the boss of FIFA and said, come on, that wasn't a red card. And suddenly an independent investigation takes place and it gets suspended, and that player can then play. Who is in control? And I think that's my issue with this, bringing this back, that Russia and Belarus are back. Everything is fine. We're just going to play sport. But what power does it give to the other people? And my issue is, I don't think the IOC have the power anymore, because they've given it up.
Yep, and I don't think the IOC had, as I said, any appetite whatsoever to make a similar sanction against the USA. USA is too important to the movement, bankrolls the movement, and whatever the USA do, whether that's in the Middle East, whether that's going and getting a sitting president from Venezuela and getting them out of their country under cover of darkness, but whatever that government is doing, the IOC did not want to take on the Americans, did they? And that is the point where we were going to get to. If they were going to continue these sanctions against Russia, they were going to have to start continuing these sanctions against the USA as well. And Kirsty Coventry, as a lot of her predecessors have also found, are in awe of world leaders and baubles like the Nobel Peace Prize and everything else. That is what they want. They're all now, I think you get to that position with the presidency of something like the International Olympic Committee, and then suddenly it's all about your legacy, isn't it? And what have you done? And even though Kirsty Coventry is very, very early on in her tenure, she'll already be thinking about how she leaves this movement behind her.
And my point again is the integrity. There is no integrity, and that's why that World Athletics statement is so strong, because they have still got integrity. They're saying this is wrong, and we're not going to change our minds on it. Well, effectively, what the Olympics mishmash is it's all wrong. Everything's wrong, but we're not going to do anything about it. We're just going to let it happen because we can't do anything about it. Well, actually, can sport make a difference? I think sport has a huge part to play, and it can change people's opinions. Hey, even Americans are liking soccer at the moment. That's how sport can influence people. And I think to just give up and how you must feel if you are a Ukrainian international Olympian who's had people fighting in the war, had people come into their country and take it over. I can't imagine how that feels.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast. We talk about the games all the time, not just once every 4 years.
If your business runs on 5 different apps, 12 browser tabs, and one spreadsheet that everyone's afraid to touch, it's probably time for Odoo. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that connects every part of your business into one powerful, easy-to-use platform. So instead of wasting time switching between disconnected systems, your entire business works together in real time. Your team moves faster, your data stays accurate, and you can actually focus on growing your business. Let one unified system run your entire business. From the first opportunity to the final payment, everything works together in one place. Whether you're a small business or managing a large operation, Odoo gives you one flexible platform built to grow with you. Learn more at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
This is Anything But Footy, gearing up for Glasgow, looking ahead to LA. So, as we've discussed, the Russians return. They're back. Well, we think they're back. And they will be sure to figure on the medal table in Los Angeles as Russia, perhaps, not as neutral, independent athletes. And we know that they will also then be figuring probably on that medal table in 2030 because the Winter Games are returning to Europe and France.
And what do we say? We're all over the Alps for 2030.
That's an early draft of where we've got a bit of time to work on it. Like the IOC, we'll make a decision down the line. We'll push this back to the international federations and the national Olympic committees and see if they're happy with the phrase all over the Alps, and then we'll make a decision.
Let us know what you think. You can always get in touch via Spotify or the website, of course. Now, we will make history, the French Alps, as the first Winter Games with gender parity. The plan is for just over 3,000 athletes set to compete across 126 events, 56 for women, 55 for men, and 15 mixed. And it means there'll be 1,500 men athletes and 1,500 female athletes for the very first time.
Yeah, I think the actual breakdown, there's going to be a handful more women than there is men, actually. There's going to be some changes to the sport program as well. So Nordic Combined, so that is ski jumping and cross-country skiing combined, as by the name, that's gone. That is out. We'll talk about why in a moment. Free ride ski and snowboard is in. This is a new one for commentary, isn't it? Plus Synchro 9 figure skating. And as we've already mentioned in a previous edition of the podcast, ski mountaineering which is where you kind of have to go up a staircase on the snow, which we saw in Milano Cortina. That stays on the programme. So free ride. It's had some rapid international growth, they tell us. It's got a strong youth fan base. It's visually spectacular. They say it doesn't even need a venue. So that's why it's in.
Yeah.
It doesn't need a venue. It's just going to happen.
Well, I mean, fantastic, and the fact that there's no course, there's no boundaries, it is a free ride. You and it's going to be both snowboard and skiing as well. So the medals in both disciplines as well. And this is a sport that started in the 1990s. I think that is all very well. But when you've got an Olympics Games and a Winter Olympics at that, as we saw in Milan, as we saw in Beijing, it's in the diary. It's in the calendar. You can't move it. It is those 2 weeks. And we saw this particularly with the Paralympics, like 3 or 4 weeks on from the Olympics in Milan. The snow had started to melt and it wasn't there. So this is all very well saying this is sustainable. This is something that we don't need to create. Yeah, only if there's snow. So ultimately, if there's no snow, do we just cancel free ride? I'm all for bringing in new sports. I've got no issue with it whatsoever. It's a sport that started in the 1990s. It's obviously incredibly popular, and snowboarding has made a huge difference to the games, and people, the youth love it, and I loved watching it, and I think it's an incredible addition. But to say quite as starkly it's about it can go where you want, and how do you judge it and all that kind of stuff?
Well, because it doesn't need a venue, it's just going to happen where the snow is, surely. I mean, it doesn't really.
So in effect, this is the French Alps, but it could well be in Italy because there's more snow there.
Yeah. Well, they are with these French Alps Games, as we know, being a bit more creative with their definition of the region.
It's not in France.
That's actually hosting some of the events. We've seen that as well. You've got a great fact, haven't you, about British chances in free ride?
Yeah, I won't claim any credit for this, but I'm told that 31-year-old Cody Bramwell, who is a great British free rider, is the world's 10th best in the world for free riding. I'm not sure that's a great phrase. I'm going to need to think about this before 2030. Free riding sounds like you're jumping on a tube and not paying. But anyway, he's the world's top 10 free ride, and he's won several events on the world tour. So Great Britain already thinking, right, add that to the medal tally.
Yeah, I think, all joking aside, people probably had these conversations with the introduction of skateboarding, certainly with the introduction of braking, with the introduction of BMX freestyle. And I think all of those things, most of those things, shall I say, I think have enriched and enhanced the Summer Games. So I'm not going to be sniffy. Just because I'm ignorant of it and I don't know too much about free ride at the moment. I'm not going to be sniffy about the inclusion. I'm going to wait and see because, I can recall times when we were beginning to bring in snowboarding into the games and people were sniffy about that. And, you watch the snowboarding, it's one of the undoubted highlights at the minute. So I'm gonna hold my judgment. We've got a British medal hope, as you've just said there, in the top 10. Of course, we know that medal would change everything with the public perception of the sport. It's not something I know too much about. I haven't watched a lot of free ride, if any free ride. So I'm going to wait and see. I'm just going to be open to it, to be honest. The other one, go on.
All I was going to say is I've got no issue with it coming into the games, but just don't tell me it's for sustainability reasons, because I guarantee you if there's no snow, they will make snow and they will make it happen. So that's my issue with it, slightly. But I think the other big sport, Synchro 9, I mean, it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah, because you've got the venue. So Synchro 9 is going to be part of the existing figure skating program. So it's going to be a new discipline. So you're going to have kind of a big team event. But whereas the team event that you've got in figure skating at the minute, you have like a men's singles and a women's singles and a pair and a duo. This is just 9 on the ice together. So the venue's there. And I know from my time in Milan that week 1 in Milan, the figure skating was very much the British focus. And then we kind of shifted out to Cortina. So you've got that venue, it's all set up for the games. So why not put on more sport in that existing venue if you can? So yes, Synchro 9, essentially synchronized figure skating.
Artistic synchronized. No, we need to say, because you tell me off for saying synchronized swimming, and it's artistic swimming. So is this artistic skating?
No, it's synchronized skating, but it is artistic swimming. It's the nuance. Now, look, the IOC, they work on 14 different sort of indicators when they're choosing their sport program. So broadcast coverage, whether there's a lot of nations across the planet that can win medals in this, what the global engagement was, what the public interest was, the digital media. So things like parallel giant slalom snowboard, that stays because it ranked very high, but Nordic Combined goes. And the evidence for this is that it's been the lowest ranked in 11 of their 14 popularity indicators for the last decade or so. Huge challenges about what nations are going to win medals in Nordic Combined. We know Norway are the most successful Winter Olympics nation ever. This is one of their big sports. You look at the medals in Nordic Combined at the last games, Norway pick up a lot of them. Only 5 nations have won medals in the sport across the last 4 editions. But that's not to say that it might not come back on the programme. We talked about this with the Commonwealth Games. It could still return for Salt Lake City, but it needs to do a bit of work on itself, shall we say.
Like you said about freeride, Nordic Combined is something I wouldn't even be able to tell you it was in the Winter Olympics before we went and covered Milan Cortina. It was something that you never saw on our televisions. It's something we never look at. Great Britain doesn't compete in it. As you say, a lot of nations don't seem to, and it does seem to be dominated by the Nordic and Scandinavian countries. Having said that, that shouldn't be a reason to just pull it out. So whether these arguments about the popularity of it are true, I think there was some discussion about whether there were enough women that took part in it. So could it be gender balanced? But that's not one of the reasons why the IOC have looked at. But it's been there since the start. I mean, it's effectively like removing swimming, because it's not very popular anymore. It's not on the television. It's not seen by people. You only get interested in it once every 4 years. And so I think that's the issue with it. However, I do totally agree with you that if you're Nordic Combined, you go away and you prove your popularity. Bobsleigh got kicked out of the Olympics in 1960. They were back in 64, and funnily enough, they haven't gone since. So I think that's what they, as a sport, need to go and do. And just because you've always been there, a bit like what you were saying earlier about bringing in new sports in the summers, just because you've always there doesn't mean that you should still be there.
No, and there'll be summer sports under this new direction that the IOC, this Fit for the Future direction. There'll be other sports like wrestling, for example, that I think could be in serious doubt. Because if I'm right, I think wrestling is male only, so I think that is a huge thing that counts against the sport. And again, they will rank wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling, against these 14 parameters. We just need to be careful, I think, in this country, not to just dismiss sports because they're not popular in our country. And you and I know this because we've been overseas and we've been to Olympic Games. So we know that in Rio de Janeiro, volleyball was hugely popular, couldn't get a ticket for volleyball. It was a huge attraction in the Olympic Park, but we knew that the equivalent session of Super Saturday in the track and field, thousands of empty seats. So just because in Great Britain, we have this pecking order of athletics is 1, swimming 2 probably, then maybe cycling, rowing, gymnastics. That's our pecking order. It's not the same around the world, and they will be looking at this, as I said, the IOC globally.
And I think just for Nordic Combined to say, well, we've been there from the start, we should always be there, is not an argument, because if not, we'd be giving out gold medals for artistic painting and tug of war.
Yeah, and they used to do various other disciplines, didn't they? I mean, modern pentathlon, they're having to change, as we know, for various reasons that we've seen, horse welfare being key amongst them. So they are trying to modernise, and there'll be a lot of people in the modern pentathlon world that, have pushed back on that, but they know that to stay in the games, they had to change. Maybe Nordic Combined will need to change as well in their ski jumping and cross-country skiing. But they're not going to be there in 2030. I don't think Team GB will be crying a river over that. I'm not sure they had any Nordic Combined superstars coming up through the ranks, but they do need to start thinking about their free riders and their Synchro 9 skaters.
They certainly do.
This is Anything But Footy. Other news from the games now, because we like to keep you updated with everything Olympic and Paralympic. We'll run through this quite quickly for you. Olympic medalist Amber Rutter has made a medal-winning return to international competition by claiming bronze at the ISSF Shotgun World Cup in Italy. The skeet shooter, who now has 2 sons, was competing in her first international event of the season, finished 3rd in the final. First time she experienced the new finals format in international competition, 36 targets. Remember, she was robbed of that gold medal in the Paris Olympics.
She was, absolutely. And talking of mums as well, back in Olympic sport, next week we're going to catch up with 2 of them as part of our look ahead to another World Championships that's taking place in the USA. No, not the Footy World Cup, but the Canoe Slalom World Championships.
I wonder if Donald Trump will be having as much say and as much interest in the results there.
Well, let's hope not, because we don't want politicians interfering in sport, as previously advertised. Now, we will hear from Mallory Franklin and Beth Forrow, as well as the other male contenders for Paddle UK, including newly crowned men's kayak under-23 world champion Sam Lever. So make sure you download, follow, listen, and you'll get that automatically next week.
I'm glad you carried on talking there, because I was going to try and do an ill-advised Donald Trump impression about red and white striped poles and green and white striped poles and how they should be switched from upstream to downstream.
Do you want to go to LA?
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Not going to do that. Paralympic gold medalist, world champion, friend of the pod, Will Bailey beat the Chinese 2-time Paralympic champion as he won the gold medal in the men's para table tennis class 7 singles at the World Para Elite in Beijing in China at the end of last month. There was a gold too for Billy Shilton and Martin Perry in the men's class 14 doubles.
It comes as Paralympic world and European medalist Megan Shackleton has taken the decision after 13 years to stop her international para table tennis career. She can spend more time with friends and family and look at alternative opportunities as well. The 27-year-old competed for Paralympics GB at 2 Paralympic Games.
Former British sprint champion cyclist Ali Fielding has also confirmed he's getting off his bike from the Great Britain team. The European and Commonwealth Games medalist for Scotland in 2022, that was, by the way, has been a vital part of the men's sprint squad for the last 8 years.
And there might be something in the water about retirements. And there is a life after competing, Michael, because Olympic silver medalist and road world champion Lizzie Dinan has been signed up for a return to British cycling, but this time as the directeur sportif. She'll bring her 20 years experience to the role, which will be supporting the road squad at major events through to the LA 2028 Olympic Games, and hopefully a future guest for great British bosses. So good luck to Lizzie Dinan in her new role.
Got the medal rush going at London 2012, didn't she? In the road race, and well, she was one of those that brought this phrase to life: if Yorkshire was a country. Wonder who came up with that. This is Anything But Footy. You can check out our socials. We're on all of the platforms. If you'd like to send us a message, you can do that. Also via our new website. If you just want to chill out and listen to some kind of Olympic-based music, you can find our playlist on Spotify. We are Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic sport podcast. We're gearing up for Glasgow and we're looking ahead to LA.